So this is where we're going to pick up in verse 17. Then it happened, when Ahab saw Elijah, that Ahab said to him, "Is that you, O troubler of Israel?" Kind of a good title when the bad guy calls you that. And he answered, "I have not troubled Israel, but you and your father's house have, in that you have forsaken the commandment of the Lord and have followed the Baals. Now therefore send and gather all Israel to me on Mount Carmel, the 450 prophets of Baal, and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table." Verse 20. So Ahab sent for all the children of Israel and gathered the prophets together on Mount Carmel. And Elijah came to all the people and said, "How long will you falter between two opinions?" Make a note of that, underline it or write it down in your notes, because we're going to come back and talk about that. How long will you falter between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him, but if Baal, follow him. But the people answered him not a word. Then Elijah said to the people, "I alone am left a prophet of the Lord, but Baal prophets are 450 men." Pause right there. Look what Elijah said, "I alone." So here, what's going on here? And as we find out, Elijah had an issue in his heart. He always felt isolated and alone. We find out that more in the next couple chapters where he feels so isolated. But isn't it interesting that Elijah just heard within the last day or two from Obadiah, "I hid 100 prophets." So he just heard the other prophets out there. And as we find out later, when he's crying out to God, "I'm all alone," God said, no, I've reserved 7,000 or 8,000 others as well. What's he telling Elijah? You're not alone. So what's the point? Elijah was inaccurate in his assessment of being isolated, which to me accentuates how much of a man this guy was. He actually thought he was the only prophet, and he actually is challenging the 400 prophets of Baal. Talk about courage. Talk about guts. Talk about it. When you're alone and you have no one else, you usually don't do these kinds of things. So if you're struggling with isolation and fear, retreating is not an option. Like taking on the demonic stronghold apparently is your next step. So what happened between verse 23 and roughly down to verse 29, a story transpired, and this is what transpired. Elijah, of course, calls a contest. Do you realize that a lot of the Bible is about who wins? And why? Because guys are in charge. And when guys are in charge, hey, let's just have a contest, let's settle the issue now, and we can all live our lives. Now, if women were in charge, I don't know what you would do. Maybe some of you would call a contest, but I'm a guy, and I know guys like, let's just settle it now. Who can jump the farthest? Who can shoot the ball the farthest? Jason and I had this contest a few months ago. He actually won, which I've been practicing ever since, on the longest shot from basketball shot in my driveway. Anyway, sorry I brought that up, but that's how guys think. We think in contest. And Elijah's like, I have an idea. Let's do a contest. You guys will have 2 altars, 2 sacrifices. You do what you do, and if your God consumes your sacrifice by fire, we will worship your God. But if my God consumes my sacrifice with fire, everyone will say, this is the real God. And sounds good. Contest is on. Start the clock.